everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We've got a fantastic conversation today. I'm really excited. We've talked about AI before, but not in the same way that we're going to talk about it today, because we've got some really good news, really exciting news, and some amazing people here to chat through this topic. So yes, thank you for joining. This conversation is really entitled The Intelligence Revolution. Really important topic, I think, because and an important sort of naming or framing of where we are technologically in the sort of progress in the world. We've been talking about digital revolution for a number of years, and the sort of surge of AI and Gen AI specifically into everybody's daily life, and the view of that moving from sort of chatbots and LLMs to reasoning models, and then further into autonomous agents, not even taking into account quantum computing and kind of robotics and all of those sorts of things, which are going to sort of happen alongside all of that, means that our futures are looking more and more uncertain. And it's really, I think, really important for us as a business to understand what that way forward looks like, and to help our clients' businesses understand how they can adapt and they can maximize opportunity through this period of really accelerated change. So we've got some amazing people on the panel today. I'm going to start off in a minute with an interview with Stephen Brobst, who is an AI consultant and advisor, and was an advisor to President Obama's Council on Science and Technology. I'm not going to look for little bits of inside gossip about President Obama's life and so on, but maybe something will come out. You never know. But most importantly, he's got a huge amount of experience, probably more than almost anyone else that I've ever met in the sector. And I'm really, really excited to hear Stephen's thoughts on AI and how it's going to impact the workplace and so on over the coming years. We also have Murad Syed and Faraz Hasan. Murad is one of the co-founders and MD for Europe of 10x, our strategic partner in AI. And Faraz is 10x MD for North America as well. So we've got some real heavyweights, if you like, in terms of the AI world here. And they, in a sense, from Equator's point of view, form part of our, if you like, accelerated intelligence offering, which is about a framework for business and how business can maximize the opportunity that Gen AI represents and do it in a kind of safe way. So really, what we want to try and do as Equator is create an offering for our clients that allows them to maximize the opportunity here, both in terms of all aspects of it, right? So in terms of team efficiencies that you can get, client servicing opportunities that you can make, market agility that you can create, and most importantly, actually, in the short term, I think, around AI governance, right? So how you can implement AI tech safely and do it in a way that you can feel confident that it's not going to let you down. These kind of touch points are really the sum of Equator's extensive digital transformation expertise and 10x's multi-decade expertise in artificial intelligence implementation. So my hope is that everybody who's come along today is going to speak to us a lot more in the future, and we'll hopefully work with some of you guys who are online today to help make those changes in your own businesses. One of the things I think that to me that's really interesting is because things are changing so fast, it's difficult to kind of put one's finger on what the successful business models are going to look like over the next 2 or 3 years. More and more, I ask people what's their 3-5 year plan, and they sort of laugh at me because the world seems so uncertain. So can you give us an idea of how you see this intelligence revolution fundamentally changing business models over the next few years? How do you see that working, or how do you see that coming to pass?
We're entering into the fourth industrial revolution. Whenever you have a
Mhm.
revolution, there's going to be a lot of blood on the floor. There's
Yeah.
hopefully going to be some goodness that comes out of it, but there will also be significant change. And humans don't like change. And there will be some demographics that'll be, negatively impacted. Jobs will go away,
Yeah.
but also new jobs will be created, and work will become more fulfilling for many.
Yeah.
And there's puts and takes on this for sure. One example, in North America, in the United States, for example, more than 50% of males that have no college education drive for a living. They drive taxis, Ubers, forklifts, trains, delivery trucks, whatever they are. Those jobs are all going to go away.
Man, yeah.
We already see, if you are in, downtown San Francisco, Los Angeles, Austin, any sort of major city in the US, you will see drivers of autonomous cars that aren't drivers. That's just
Hmm.
AI software, right? So
Yeah.
you already are seeing, and I was with a European friend, and a car went by with no driver, and she was like freaking out. And that's just normal now, right? That's the new norm.
Yeah.
And so those jobs are all going to go away, and those folks are going to need to learn how to use AI to enhance their skills to do new things and hopefully more interesting things.
Yeah.
There's a nice quote by a guy named Jerry Kaplan, who's kind of a futurist and a computer scientist, and he will tell you that AI doesn't take jobs away from people, but it requires new skills in order for those people to, do new things, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so it's it obsoletes skill sets. It doesn't obsolete people. That's an important observation.
Kind of feel like the moment where we're at feels like a place where sort of everybody's using AI kind of under the radar, and it's not really embedded into the ways of working yet. And I wonder how we help ourselves and others make that leap into much more revolution of ways of working, not just at a personal level, but at an organizational level.
There's a lot of stuff happening underneath the cover, and there's definitely a fear. But I think it's important to understand that using generative AI is not cheating. It's a skill
Mhm.
set multiplier. You still need to bring skill to the table, because if you have zero skill, multiplying by zero is still zero. So you have to take your skills, and then you use generative AI to make those skills more powerful. AI is like a superpower for augmenting humans in doing their jobs. You have to use it as an accelerator for making you, I'll say, smarter, right?
Yeah.
So when I talk about AI, the people that look at it just as a way of making things cheaper often think AI stands for automated intelligence. I
Hmm.
like the term augmented intelligence, where you're augmenting the human intelligence, you're amplifying the skill sets that a human brings to the table.
In your experience, kind of what separates those companies that achieve transformation, uh, true transformation through AI, and those that are just kind of dabbling?
The successful enterprises are industrializing the AI. In other
Mhm.
words, they're putting into place, processes and procedures and templates and a way of working that is much more auditable, much more transparent, much less bias, and by the way, much more scalable. Organizations that had their technology teams working together with the business stakeholders delivered 4 to 6% higher profitability, not revenue, but profitability.
So, what do you see as the most common data strategy challenges that companies are facing when they're trying to implement this kind of technology?
Certainly, one of them is around data quality
Uh-huh.
and transparency of the data. So I often say that, if people tell me their data is good, that means I know they haven't looked at it. If they tell me their data is bad, I know it's worse. And so you have to focus on data quality, not as a project, but as a continuous improvement process. But also recognize that if you wait till the data is perfect to do something, you will never do anything. Data is a reusable resource, and the more you use it, the better it gets.
Yeah.
And so you invest in the data quality, and yet you have to use it for the data quality to get better. You know,
Yeah.
perfection is the enemy of greatness. And if you wait for perfect data, you do nothing ever. And so focusing on that is very important from a data point of view. And then the transparency, and this is particularly important with GDPR and CCPA and AI Act, to get a complete transparency of where did the data come from and
Hmm.
what are all the transformations that you did. So having complete lineage and auditability of the data that you're using is critical. And
Yeah.
so we have to shift the thinking from the data as an asset type of mentality to data as a product. Data as a product, you measure success based on consumption. You measure success based on the value created from the insights that you get from the data. And it's very, very different.
Yeah.
When you think about data as an asset, it very much is source system oriented. You inventory all the source systems where all your data is, and you start accumulating all the data into some data warehouse and so on. But even worse is you put it in a data lake. You don't even curate it. You don't even clean it. You just dump a bunch of bytes on disk drives, and this is a disaster.
Yeah.
Data product, you're curating the data for consumption, and
Yeah.
it's consumption driven. It's not source system driven, and
Hey,
you're working much more proactively with the business stakeholders to understand their requirements.
just realizing I should bring Murad and Faraz in here a little bit, because I'm sure everybody on that sort of note about failing fast and creating that innovation culture, which I believe actually is made easier using AI. It's actually much more cost effective to innovate now than it's ever been. Um, I'm thinking, you guys, can you sort of give the audience a little bit of a sense about, you know, how we enter into that conversation about organizational transformation? Where do we start in terms of helping businesses fully leverage AI, and if you like, accommodate that, maybe that fear of failure or that sense of cultural or structural, if you like, inertia around that adoption? Where do we start with all of that, and how can we give anyone listening who's like, okay, I get it, but like, where do I start? How do we give them confidence that we can kind of lead them on a journey, and what does that journey look like? Can you guys kind of contribute to that thought?
I think that the number one thing that we look for when we're working with our clients is where is the business value. And I think Stephen, you touched upon that as well. There's sometimes a temptation, especially with technology teams, to go out there and look for the greatest and best technology and the fastest and most scalable and so on. But the reality is that none of that is useful unless there's a clear business case and there's an understanding and alignment across the organization around what the goal is.
I kind of wonder, if you were to sort of try and sum up, if you like, what the key ingredients of the a successful implementation are. Like, what are the things that really made a difference for those organizations were doing? What was the sort of key ingredients for success in it?
One of the key elements, and Stephen alluded to this as well, was the change management, the humans, not the technology. So all the way from top leadership taking ownership in terms of defining the business goals and objectives of what needs to be done, and then uh, taking that leadership role in terms of taking that solution and actually converting it into the promised ROI. In a lot of these cases, what we've seen is that even if the model does work perfectly, if it sits in the backend servers and it's not made part of the organization in terms of being rolled out and adopted, the true ROI does not come in. So that change management part is very important. So, and that overall requires strategic ownership from the top management from the start till the end. I think that's one
And
of
I
the
think
key
that's
things.
a critical. It's a critical point, because very often we calculate return on investment on high value and low cost, but you have to risk adjust the return on investment with, I call it, organizational readiness, which is essentially what Murad is saying, right? So if you don't risk adjust, if you don't have a C-level sponsor, your risk adjustment needs to bring the expected value of that ROI lower, right? It's very hard to do organizational change from the bottom up, even with a great idea. So if
Mm.
you don't have the top-down support, and of course you also have to build the bottom up, then your organizational readiness does not get a full score. And so you have to risk adjust your return on investment to properly prioritize your business improvement opportunities.
Yeah. So in the same way that we would look at organizational readiness for digital transformation, it's the same thing. It's organizational readiness for AI implementation as well.
AI is
Something I'd
essentially
like
an
to-
extreme form of digital transformation, right? So